Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Reem Hamdan. I'm a PhD scholar at Brunel in my second year. My paper is about determinants of board gender diversity in firms listed in Bahrain boards. I'm going to start with the background, a little literature review and theoretical background, methodology results, and future research. Actually, this is a small part of my PhD, looking at the determinants. I'm looking to understand board gender diversity in GCC as a holistic view in financial markets, like the Bahraini market, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and other GCC countries, if possible. So the background of this research is, has been known that board gender diversity has been a hot topic among many governments and on the strategic agendas for many corporations. Basically, some European countries like Norway, France, Spain, UAE, as a Middle Eastern country, and Malaysia as well. Beside the ethical view for board gender diversity, we have something else which is called the business case. As we know, boards are performing in a business environment, or corporations, for example. So have a look for the numbers of board members in GCC and some international perspective, some countries like France, Germany, Italy. As we can notice, we have among GCC, the percentage is very low. And at some point we have, it's like Qatar, it's 0.3, it's very low numbers. But the good news, GCC is not the only region that this is a problem with it. As we can notice, we have a very low percentage in Japan. So this leads us to think why the numbers are very low. The source for these numbers are from Hawkama Institute, which is in UAE. It takes consideration to study the governance issues in the GCC, and board gender diversity is one issue of that. So many studies try to understand why these numbers are very low. In countries like GCC, we have the cultural factor, we have the governance factor, as board gender diversity is contributed with the governance issues. So, and we have also the religious factor, but which doesn't have the appropriate evidence to back up this situation. So. So why board gender diversity is important? Basically, to what diversity brings to boards, as if a board is totally composed of of men, it's more probably that we have something called group thinking. Diversity would prevent that. Presence of women would be a possible way to diversify thoughts, ideas, and which lead to better decision making, eventually affecting performance of the firm or the performance of the board itself, giving a holistic view for the decision, and it would be a better decision eventually. So the theoretical background, many theories covered this issue. Basically, from a governance perspective, we have the agency theory, which is concerned about the conflict that may arise between agents and principals. In emerging markets, we have something else which is called principal conflict, basically because the ownership concentration in these financial markets is highly concentrated. In some emerging markets, we have high concentration of governmental ownership, and familial ownership. And research has proved that diversity in boards brings independence, or females are more to be independent directors, which enhance the governance in the firm and eventually leading for better decision taking as well. Resource dependence theory, which looks as directors as resources for the firm, with their connections, with their relations, they may provide a way or a means of communication with the lenders and financial resources for the company. And as well, we have something called tokenism, where females are seen as tokens, or they are pushed to the board. In the case of like familial firms, where they hire the family members without looking at the qualifications, not necessarily being qualified or should be sitting at this position. And we have the critical mass theory, which is the opposite for the tokenism. Some literature implies that for females to be effective enough in a place like board, there should be a critical mass, maybe 3 or more. This is still under research. What is the optimal number for females? As 1 female is not enough in a board, depending on the size of the board, typically. As when it's only 1 female, mainly her opinions may not be listened to, and she's not effective enough. She might be not effective enough. Nobody's considering her opinion, or she may be unable to express herself. We have also the stakeholders theory, where firms are performing in a community or as a society, and it has responsibilities towards this society by hiring the one part of the society, which is females. In most societies, females consist 50% or more, in some societies more or less, but it's a good percentage, a high percentage that should be represented in a board. So, okay. Reminding you, I was looking to the determinants of board gender diversity in Bahrain boards. So I gathered the data for 39 listed companies in Bahrain boards, depending on the availability of data, or some firms did not disclose this information or data I needed. And the years covered are 2011 to 2015. Variables I took based on the literature, the variables that were covered by the literature. I typically took the relevant variables that would matter or be relevant in the Bahraini context. Basically, women on board was my independent variable, and all other these variables related to governance, firm age, and firm characteristics. For the governance issues, we took ownership concentration, and the most existing ownership type, which is in the Bahraini context, is the institutional ownership, and board independence, board size, based on the literature. So what was found that from the descriptive statistics, the most important finding was percentage of women is very low in the Bahraini context comparing to the board seats available. It's only 6%, which is very low. And I ran a regression to find the effect of these variables on presence of females on boards. The most important findings were related to the Tobin's Q, which is a variable indicating the performance of a firm in the market, and it was negatively associated. This was relevant to the existing literature that females, when they sit on the boards in emerging markets, they may not be effective enough related to the operational performance, and there is a negative view from the investors in emerging markets, maybe probably for the presence of societal norms or negative perceptions towards females in leadership positions like board of directors. We also had a positive association between board size and the presence of women. So the bigger the board, the more possibility, or it's more likely to them to hire women, not necessarily depending on their qualifications or efficiency. We also looked at the ownership concentration, institutional ownership, which is the most existent type of ownership in the Bahraini market, and it has a positive effect on the presence of women. That's probably because institutions tend to be more related to the society, and as a presence of women in such positions is positively viewed, and they tend to hire more women than others. And the limitations of the research, mainly generalizability, of course, and not considering other factors rather than firm level factors. We have other factors that I'm gonna look in my PhD, basically country level factors, mainly the economic factor, the presence of women in labor market, as most GCC countries suffer from high levels of women not employed, and also we have the socio-political factors, such as the presence of how females are represented, not only in board seats. We have maybe, there is no female ministers, females are not represented in the political positions like ministries, like parliaments, like political parties, and it certainly have some effect, which I'm gonna look at in my PhD. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions?